Welcoming everybody to the weekly leadership circle, the weekly leadership roundtable, where we are deep diving into elements of humanizing transformation. So how we can support projects and programs becoming people movements. And of course, we all know that that starts with ourselves. So the particular subject that we're going to talk to today is the networked mindset. And I have to admit, the networked mindset is a really interesting one and a great one. I've just come off a call with a group of our practitioners, and one of the practitioners said, I love this mindset. It's my favorite because you can just keep going and going and going with it. It is amazing. It's the gift that keeps on giving. So what I wanted to do today in just the short time that we're together is I just wanted to share with you 7 things that some of them you may know, but some of the things that you might not have thought about that relate to the networked mindset. And hopefully at the end of this short session, you might be able to take a little bit more value or a little bit more richness to your own practice around the networked mindset and what that might be. Of the 7 things, what's the first thing? Well, the first thing for us to recognize is that the networked mindset doesn't work in silo. The networked mindset is indeed one of 7 mindset dimensions that together create a modern leader, a modern manager, a modern worker. So the mental model of modernity is based on 7 dimension mindsets, and the network mindset is number 3. And just a quick thing to share with everybody, which I just think is wonderful, is we tend to, as practitioners, we tend to call the network mindset the pivot mindset. And the reason for that is when we look at the other 6 mindsets, they cluster into 2 groups. So digital, data, mindful and prepared, which is about future focus, tends to cluster. And then audience, beginner's mindset, which is adaptive and agile, and the transparent, authentic, open mindset, those 3 mindsets cluster. And what we've noticed over the years is if you really cultivate and nurture and develop a networked mindset, all the other mindsets just come up at the same time with you. It's just a really lovely mindset to get into. So that is the most important thing to begin today's session with, is that network mindset doesn't work in silo. The other thing is you know, if we were to do a quick mind map and go into chat, and I ask you when you think about networked, when you think about being networked, what comes up for you? And you know, if something does come up for you, if you've got some ideas, pop them into chat. But essentially, a lot of the time people think about, you know, well, it's how networked I am with other people. And other people will say, well, it's about, am I connected with technology? Because when I think about network, I think about technology networks, Mel. So I think it's all about, is it about technology? Well, it's all of that and more. But I think for us, what we have is we have this lovely little model that helps us to expand and broaden the definition of a network mindset. So the second thing is about how broad that definition is. And it's really interesting, Dilyn, that you've put the word community in there, because it's exactly where I'm going to go with this one. So we always have this little model, which is I, we, us, and all. So I is me, myself. We is the team or the peer group around me. Beyond that, we have the organizational system, which is us, and then we have beyond that all, which is community, society and planet. So what's really nice here is it brings in the regeneration, it brings in the sustainability into the chain. So it's I, we, us, all. Network mindset, so much more than just being networked from a people perspective, or indeed from a tech perspective. I think one of the other things as well is that a networked mindset can be used to break down silos. Because when somebody has a networked mindset, when you're consciously being networked, you work out, you don't work up. So you are naturally, deliberately working across silos. So you're helping to break those walls down, you're helping to weaken them to the point that they will break down. And that supports, obviously, that shift that we're all every one of us working in transformation, in projects and programs around change, is supporting in some way a shift from the left-hand side of this screen to the right-hand side of the screen, from that Michael Porter reductionist approach, you know, the traditional organizational chart that you see there, which is purely hierarchical, towards the more ecosystem approach on the right-hand side, which is not, you know, this is not favoring holacracy without hierarchy. We'll always need hierarchy, but what this is saying is that moving towards a more decentralized and more distributed structure, we know now statistically favors purpose, favors effectiveness and productivity. So it means that data and you know, through human and technology flows around and through a modern system instead of data just flowing up in the traditional system. So it naturally breaks down these silos. So again, wow, really important for us to think about our own network mindset and how we might be more deliberate in the way that we work across silos. So I don't know how many of you work within a project, within a department, within a service area at the moment, and you might be networked within that, but how, you know, how can you deliberately connect with people, build human relationships to weaken those silo walls? That is such a subtle way of addressing the ability to break down silos. The next one is wonderful. So it talks about that community that you mentioned earlier on, Dilyn. It's the networked mindset. To truly have a networked mind is someone that is in support of sustainability. And I love this quote here from Otto Scharmer and Katrin Kauffer, and it comes from the book Leading from the Emerging Future, is that you know, and a little bit of what I just showed you earlier on from the Michael Porter to the Gillian Tett approach is, you know, instead of being in an ecosystem, what a networked mindset favors is an ecosystem. And I was having a conversation yesterday with one of our practitioners who has been practicing her networked mindset, and she has been deliberately crossing boundaries into different silos. Now, what's interesting is that she's entered into one department, and that department has got a very ecosystem approach. It is their territory. It is their thing that they're working on, and therefore the doors have been closed. And she's not allowed in. I was going to say the doors have been closed in her face, but I didn't necessarily want to say that, but I have. There you go. And we had a conversation yesterday about, you know, what do I do about that? Do I compromise my networked mind, or is there something that I can do? So we looked at different techniques that she can use to actually, you know, meet these people where they're at, but still be authentic and still support, you know, a slow burn progression towards that ecosystem awareness. And she's got 2 or 3 techniques that she's taking away with her to work on that, which I absolutely think is brilliant. Number 4, this is an interesting one. I don't know how many people have heard of the work of Heart Math Institute here on today's call. So there is, and this is very emergent in the world of leadership. It's been around forever and a day, but this concept of coherence. So the 4th thing that you need to know about a networked mind is that it works inside you as well as out. So, you know, you can think about the outward, more obvious elements of the networked mindset, but it also is when you think about how networked you are internally as a human being. And that's called coherence. And what is interesting about coherence is that it is what we can use ourselves and to support others to respond to change or stress rather than react to it. So if you imagine our brain operates on a different frequency, on a particular frequency and wave, our heart, which is our emotion and energy, also works on a particular frequency and wave. When they are both working in sync, what that means is the chemicals in our brain allow our brain to be open. So the areas of our brain that are activated are the creative areas, the innovative areas, the open, broad, areas that we are able to adapt, that we're able to see and ideate and create. When our heart and our brain are working in different frequency, what that does is it switches off certain areas within our brain, which means that we can become blinkered. It means that we cannot see broadly. So we see narrow, we become more and more tunnel vision. And also what happens then is that if change comes around us, or if we're in a stress situation, it means that the only thing that we can do is to rely on the past. So we tend to react with, well, we did that then, so let's do it now, or let's just stop and retrench. And we saw an awful lot of this at the beginning of COVID, that sense of, dissonance in terms of the between the heart and the brain. It's a very, very emergent area, but there is a huge body of science and research behind it that shows how incredibly powerful and quick it is to help yourself or a leader or even a team, a project team that are in a stressful situation, to ensure that they stay in heart-brain coherence so that they are able to stay in a creative and responsive frame of mind. It's super, super, super exciting. And what I've done for everybody here is I've popped in a little video by a gentleman called Dr. Alan Watkins, who talks about some of the amazing things that you can experience when you are in a coherent state. And you might also want to go to the Heart Math Institute as well, because that is super exciting when you go into that work. So the fifth thing that we should be aware of when we foster and generate and nurture a network mindset is that we're able to turn ideas into innovations, which is great. Because an idea on its own is nothing. And there's some famous quotes around that. And if we are able to bring ideas together, to bring two ideas together, or to add a human to an idea or data to an idea in order for it to spark, then what we're able to do is we are able, with a network mindset, to be creative and innovative. So a networked mindset is always about how I can be a broker. So it's one thing to create your networks, but it's another thing to look around you always and see where you can broker connections in terms of ideas that you can see or data points that you can see. And this concept, believe it or not, has been around since 2010. And there's this wonderful TED talk, again, that I've got here in the slides for you all on playback to have a look at. And it's called When Ideas Have Sex. And essentially, Matt Ridley, and I know this video is from 2010, but he's still doing some amazing work in terms of how to foster and enable an innovative frame of mind within teams and organizations. But he talks about the something called significance, which is really, really interesting. If you think about something like a nail has got so much potential latent energy, but just a nail in its own right is nothing. It's just a thing. But as soon as you connect that nail with another thing, which is full of latent energy and possibility, a hammer, you put those two things together, and suddenly together you have significance and you have value. And that's the kind of concept that he's bringing into innovation and project management and transformation at an organizational level. It's really quite a fascinating idea. So, number 5, a networked mindset, our ability to just be conscious as we go through our days of who we are seeing, what we are hearing in people's words and seeing in their actions, what we're being presented to in terms of technology and data. Number 6, the obvious one, we're all here around humanizing transformation, right? So a network mindset, of course, favors the human. It absolutely favors the human. And what I'm presenting to you here is just an image from the work of David Ehrlichman, who has written a book called I think it's called The Network Shift, but it's all about network mindset. And this particular mindset, David Ehrlichman has done an awful lot of research on. I still also think that the work that he's done is absolutely super and amazing, but I do think that there's also that, that broader element of it moving into society, community, and environment, planet as well. But what you can see here is just some of the flip side between an individual that might have a little bit more of a hierarchical mindset. Again, the word hierarchical, I would probably just say traditional there rather than hierarchical, because we still think and favour that hierarchy is required in systems as well, but just not command and controlling it. But looking at what we've got here, just seeing everything down the right-hand side of this column, it just becomes blatantly obvious, doesn't it, that a networked mindset it favours the human element of change and transformation in that ecosystem. Servant leadership, distributed leadership, collective decision making. Everybody. Let's be networked. It's an open mindset, open by default. Relationship orientated. This is something very interesting as well, which is measure yourself not on the acquaintances you have, measure yourself on the depth of relationship you have with people, which is super important. You want to have a mixture of those two. Just to have hundreds and thousands of acquaintances without depth of relationship as well doesn't necessarily make sense, which is why you will see in a lot of algorithms that are specific to social media platforms. And I told you we weren't going to talk about social media today, but I'm only just going to talk to it in this context. But what you will see is that if you have a few deep relationships with people, the networked effect is not those people that you're connected to, it's the people that they are connected to. That's where the potential power comes for you. So depth of a few relationships in order to widen out is a super important element as well for us to consider. And then the final one is that a networked mindset, if we are thinking about all of these things that I've just mentioned, what we're actually doing is we're supporting our own reputation and credibility. That lovely saying, you don't know what you don't know. The more networked we are in terms of knowledge and insight and people, and that we, us all into the community, etc., then what it means is that there is a diversity in the way that we think and an ability for us to apply critical thinking and to bring difference into conversations. And what that does absolutely is build reputation and credibility. I have worked in my mentoring and coaching work, I have worked exclusively with leaders just on this networked mindset to help them build reputation and credibility, with a depth that is not just the people that you need to know, but actually just thinking about, what it brings in and of, etc., etc. I'm just looking at a comment that's come in, interested as to whether you think hierarchical traditional mindsets and network mindsets depend on context, or whether the argument is that we need to move away from the former in everything that we do. Really, really, really good question. I think it's important for us to recognize that hierarchy in terms of decision making is something that is required. But who has the power and permission of hierarchical decisions should be more based on profile rather than label. And I think that is really important. So if you look at a lot of the work that the military and defense do, when you're thinking about how they operate human systems within a war zone, then you can actually see a really good synergy between hierarchical and networked mindset. How you can have what they call swarming as well as hierarchy. So I think, you know, the answer to that question is, without question, context is key. And I think it's really, really, really important for us to support in our transformations this concept of profile over label. Because somebody to be put into a role and suddenly to be default into power is not necessarily the right thing to do. But in our traditional systems, oh Jiminy Cricket, you know, that happens so much, and I think we all experience that. So you know, definitely from that perspective. Another comment coming in. Is the goal ever to change staff from hierarchical to network mindset, or is it to encourage when it is and isn't present? So yes, I think that what our responsibility, especially in the context of humanizing transformation, I think it is absolutely our goal to nurture and foster a networked mindset anywhere and everywhere. And to recognize when it is and isn't present is really important. And, you know, in the example that I gave earlier on, you know, I think the lady, the practitioner that was speaking to me yesterday, was clearly in a situation where a network mindset was not present. And it's then, what techniques do we have as modern leaders and practitioners to be able to manage through that? So yeah, really, really important. And the second part of that comment, as someone who falls firmly in the network mindset type, that you find it challenging and it really takes significant energy to work with hierarchical colleagues. It absolutely does. One of the things that I will say to you in that is that when you're in an instance where you get that, you know, that exactly that instance that I was sharing with a practitioner, that you're up against hierarchy, just have a think about whether there might actually be dissonance there. Are they thinking about thing and what we need to do, and just influencing, and you know, and really just, you know, you've got to do this, we've got to do this, and quite hierarchical in terms of their ownership and permission to be able to say that to you and expect that of you. If you get that sense, then what you're experiencing is you're experiencing dissonance and not coherence. So what you might want to do is you might want to recognize it, stop, and then see whether, depending on the person, see whether you might be able to introduce a conversation which is around energy or emotion. Now, you don't just, you know, blatantly, let's talk about your emotion at the moment, but just some, you know, just some signals towards energy and emotion in the conversation. And then once that, and you'll feel just a tiny little shift in the conversation, and what that means is just a little bit of coherence, and then come back in. So that might be one little technique that you can do. When hierarchical mindset is deeply ingrained, you know, the techniques sometimes you know, don't work for us because somebody is so incredibly deeply ingrained. And I think the other thing as well there is, are you experiencing an egoic mind? And if you're experiencing an egoic mind, then there are some other different techniques that we would employ to it. But if it's simply, you know, naively a little bit of dissonance, then I think something that you can do. Absolutely. And another question coming in, reflecting that that another alternative to mindsets of I, we, us, all is an appeal them. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's what happens. What you get is the I, we, us, all, Amber, is you get that sense of community. An appeal to a hierarchical top-down answers without understanding that they can't make good decisions because they don't know what. Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think I'm in support of that comment wholeheartedly, Amber. And there's something here as well, which is fear of failure. A lot of hierarchical mindset comes from that fear of failure. And because I'm here, I can't be seen to not know, and I can't be seen to be vulnerable, because what that does is essentially is indicate a failure. And yet, if we've got a community-based way of thinking and a community system that we're fostering, then that stuff starts to broaden out. One of the earlier weekly moments was talking about culture versus community. So that might be a really good one to replay on that one. Absolutely. Some really, really great comments there. Thank you for those. Really great. Keep those comments coming in, because that's exactly what these sessions are all about. Just very quickly, these sessions are also in the public domain. So the other thing that I just want to share with everybody is just bringing you up to speed with the Practitioner Leadership Academy. So everything that you've heard and will continue to hear for the next few moments around a network mindset is one element of the professional certification around humanizing transformation. And professional certification in humanizing transformation leverages heavily on the Dilyn Way, which is an adaptive and agnostic framework and approach. It's all based on a framework and approach that you see here that is supported by 150 practice indicators. And that's great, because what that means is we can go into any situation, any human system, large or small, and know that we can support that system uniquely to their situation. So if you'd like to know more about humanizing transformation as a thing, or indeed if you'd like to know more about humanizing transformation for your own practice or others, then please do be in touch with myself. And I've popped a little link, a Calendly link, into the chat, just at the top of the chat. And just, feel free to organize a strategy session with myself, and I can give you a flavor of what some of our work is, because it's there's a lot of mentoring and coaching support within that. So, we can go through a little bit of where you're at now, where you're going, and some mapping to get you there, especially, some of the richness that I've already heard. So what I want to do now is just very quickly just share some stuff with you, which hopefully will just take you into an action. Is there any practice that I can take away from this session? And I know this session isn't specifically for practice, but I think those of you that know me and have been on this session before know that it's one thing to talk about theory and talk about concept, but it's another thing to go away and be able to do something, which I think is really good. And I think one thing to take away from today is, if you can take away the absolute belief and fact that everything is connected, absolutely everything is connected. And and just simply knowing that when an individual that is in a foul mood walks into a team meeting, how that individual can impact on the energy of that meeting without any words, without any PowerPoint slides. Everything is connected. And if we remind ourselves of that every day and start to become aware of it, we start to be able to understand it and be able to do something about it. One of the things that I wanted to share with you in terms of being able to build out your network mindset is just for you to think about some of the positive outputs that it does give. It absolutely leans into the learning mindset, doesn't it? If you're favoring a network mindset, then your capacity for learning and your curiosity naturally increases, and therefore your ability to ideate increases as well. And that, bring that in. It gives resilience because it allows us to challenge status quo. And it does that because we're connected with things that are happening over there that are different to where we are here. So again, that celebration of difference. When we're a networked mind, we're always pooling creative intelligence. And I think that is amazing. There's a focus on humanity, and that sense of humanity broadens, and that deepens as well over time. There absolutely is that sense of a network mindset, if you're able to do one tiny thing, a 1% marginal gain on the 7 things that I've shared with you today, I would almost guarantee to you that your reputation and credibility will be positively impacted as a result. And a lot of people that work in the world of change and transformation do tend to get so labeled that credibility. You know, if you're a great project manager, you'll always be a project manager. It's so hard for you to break that glass ceiling into programs, into portfolio, into PMO, into broader leadership, because you're known for doing something really good, and people want to keep you in that area, but it's not necessarily where your moonshot is. So really, you know, encouraging and fostering a networked mindset in everybody's right is something that can absolutely give a positive reputation and credibility to help us to move through systems to peak performance in terms of our professional world as well. And our ability to succeed and achieve, you know, just think about the coherence bit. You know, if we're able to manage our brain and heart coherence so that we're responding more, then when stresses come and disruptions come, and that's a world that we live in, there's so much fragmentation, there's so much uncertainty around us, what it means is that we can still succeed in those times. We can still achieve. We can still keep moving forward when people around us are falling apart, because just one element of that you know, that networked mindset, really important. And the other thing that I wanted to share with you, and I've just seen another comment come in, so I'll come to that in just a moment. But one of the things I just wanted to share with you as a little bit of a takeaway is this little diagram here. Now, it's not a structured exercise or anything like that, but we play with this. This is a bit of a serious play conversation that we have with teams, and we also have with leaders and with practitioners. So you can see at the top is that sense of how, you know, how networked am I, and internally and externally. That sense of, you know, how networked am I with my peers and my team, and how networked are they? How networked am I into the us human system, which is the organizational system? How networked am I across and deeply into that? And how networked is the system, the organizational system itself? And then beyond that into community, society, and planet. So we've got that along the top. And then on the right hand side, what you've got is you've just got 9 little things to think about, which are just basic at the top: tech, data, and people. So that's just tactical. So that's it. That helps us be connected to the things that we need to do. And then you've got vision, strategy, and competence. So that, you know, helps us to connect with the broader element, and that connects very much into the us element. So how connected are we into vision, into strategy, and into the competencies that are available? Are we connected into the competencies available in this organization? And it's interesting, we did a really big community index assessment for an organization a while ago. And what was really interesting is the organization was just about to go into restructure and voluntary redundancy and when we did the community index assessment, what we found was that there were so many people that had job titles that might have been customer service manager, that, you know, and one particular individual was a customer service manager, and those roles were under consideration. And at night school, he was training himself in Python and on an artificial intelligence program. Now, the organisation didn't understand that. So it's just really understanding the competencies beyond, you know, job role and label within your organisation. Are we connected and networked into the competencies that we have? And then the final 3 that you've got there are the deeper elements of, you know, how connected are you to your own purpose, and how connected are you to the purpose of the organization, and then your peers and your team, and etc. And holism, of course, is that inner bit, is the dimensions of you as a human being, and genuine kind of, you know, the conscious ethical element. How connected are we how networked are we into the ethical considerations of what we're doing. And what we do is we just have a little bit of a serious play conversation with people and just say, you know, if you just put some dots in here and just think about, you know, with some post-its, which areas are the easiest or most natural or strongest for me, myself, and a team might want to work on that. And which areas do we think are the hardest, maybe the less familiar, or even the weakest that we might want to work on, and just seeing whether we can actually just build more of an ecosystem sense of network, being networked, rather than you know, an ecosystem that is what our traditional systems are all about. So I'm just going to go back to a couple of the comments that have come through. So first comment, just to mention here, I think this is such an important source of knowledge that is perhaps under recognized in project management. I wonder how this network mindset and understanding differs across cultures. That's a really, really good one. So I think there's two parts to that. So the first part that I will say to you is, I do not, in my experience, believe that you know, the true richness of a networked mindset is accessible to project managers and change managers. And I think it is absolutely an imperative. I think it's something that everybody you know, has a right to understand and to have the permission to explore and develop. And then how that understanding differs across cultures. I think that it would be naive for us to brush over cultures and say that we should all, you know, we should all get into a big red bus together. I think the nuance of culture is something that we need to be very, very mindful of and respectful of. Notwithstanding, I think what we ought to be doing with a network mindset is, first and foremost, with recognizing a particular culture, then take it as and make it relative, because I think there are different levels of the network mindset, and you know, we can see it relative to our particular situation. And Leah, I think you mentioned earlier on that sense of context. So yeah, absolutely. And another comment that's come in, yes, I've been thinking that the cultures in the Middle East and the southern USA is more dominated by network mindset, whereas the UK is much more hierarchical in my experience. And that's another thing that's really important. When I'm with a group of practitioners from different areas in the world, they will bring their perception and reality based on their own experience into the conversation. And I have had people say, in my experience and in my reality, the UK is a lot more network mindset than America. So I think there's something here for us to be conscious of, which is a little bit of the authentic open mindset, is, and to celebrate diversity, is to recognize the difference between perception and reality, which is our experience, and truth and fact, and try and work to that. So it's quite difficult, but certainly in that, you know, in that response, what I would say is there factual data in support of that? And then once we are able to manage and uncover that factual data, then we can move to a relative baseline and see whether we can work up from there. But it's really interesting, because my experience of working with Australia, as an example, is incredible networked mindset. Now, I was talking with an Australian yesterday, and the response was, oh, they're the most hierarchical culture you could come across. Really interesting. So our perception and our reality based on our own personal experiences actually drove up to very, very different data points for that. So again, I think just recognizing the difference between truth and fact versus perception and reality, really important. And the one thing that I will say there as well, actually, Leah, is that trying to help somebody shift perception and reality is really, really, really difficult, because, you know, our reality is who we are, isn't it? It's how we define ourselves. So, you know, that element of humanizing transformation is a conversation for another day, but a wonderful conversation for another day. So what I've done here is I've just popped a couple of things in for everybody, and I've just seen Ravi. Ravi, you've popped your hand up. I might just stop and just come to you because I don't know whether you might be wanting to respond to the conversation we've just had around culture.
Yeah, sorry, just choosing to use my voice rather than type.
That's all right.
Yeah, just to say that I think sometimes one can think that the only person who benefits from a steep hierarchy is that person right at the top. I think trouble with hierarchies sometimes you can find that there are those in the middle of that hierarchy or at the bottom who also enjoy the hierarchy because for them it presents them with predictability, and they don't necessarily have to worry, inverted commas, about having to make a decision or to offer an opinion, and their life, they take comfort in that predictability. So it's I think in hierarchies it's not only the person right on top who lusts after that power. The person at the bottom may not have power, but they have something else which they enjoy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think that's really that is really true. And again, you know, in our consciousness as modern practitioners and modern leaders, it's recognizing when that is healthy and when that becomes unhealthy, because, you know, a lot of people can also rest on their laurels based on, well, you know, it's not my job, it's their job, or it's not my responsibility. It's somebody else's. So you know what you end up there with, Ravi, which I think is what's really good about the networked ecosystem and some of the methodology frameworks like Semco style, is that, you know, you really you have really deep conversations around accountability and responsibility, you know, so that everybody within the ecosystem that still has hierarchy, but everybody understands the responsibility and the accountability that is within, you know, within their sphere. And I think that's a really important bit, because sometimes people can actually just literally just, you know, delegate that out, can't they? And it's like, I'm not responsible, I'm not accountable, but I'll still come to work Monday to Friday, and I'll still, thank you very much, take my paycheck at the end of the month, you know. So I think, you know, there's it's bordering on, you know, the world of ethics as well and being ethical. That's a really good comment, a really good comment. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and just looking here, you know, Amber, even within country, organizational cultures can vary massively. Absolutely. And you know, something else as well, which is an interesting point to raise, is most sectors now have got a parallel sector, haven't they? They've got a technology twin, or a digital twin, as you will. You know, the finance sector has got fintech, the health sector has got, you know, medtech. You know, we've also got these, you know, we've got these parallel sectors, and all of a sudden, you know, they're in silos in and of themselves, and, you know, trying to get them to operate as ecosystems is another thing. So I think, you know, Amber, what you're saying there is absolutely true. And even at a sector level, we're now starting to see these kind of, you know, we've got the traditionals, and then we've got the, you know, and then we've got the, you know, the startups that are coming up. But actually, how we foster ecosystem there is really important, indeed. Oh, fantastic. Thank you everybody for your comments and thoughts. Just quickly, I know that we're at time, but if you're able to hang around maybe just for a minute or two, I just want to take you through just a couple more slides. How does a network mindset support the human system? Well, I think, you know, we've talked about that all today, which I think is brilliant. You know, it's the celebration and the support of difference. And I think there's something incredibly important, is that a networked mindset supports the human system by enabling that system to unite on purpose, not unify on purpose, but unite on purpose. We are individually unique. We don't want to conform or unify. What we want to do is we want to uniquely unite into a single purpose. That's super important. And I think one of the other things for me is what you see here as well. You know, if you want to foster a network mindset around you, be a broker of connections. You know, think about that when ideas have sex. Think about, think about how you can connect ideas with ideas, ideas with people, people with data, tech, whatever it might be. But thinking about brokering is a really important thing. Practicing the principle of open by default, and trying to deliberately work across silos, not in a negatively disruptive way, but just in a relational way, is really super important, because you will, I can guarantee, start to weaken those walls. To start to champion that ecosystem approach as opposed to the ecosystem approach. Now, I don't know how many of you are aware of the phraseology ecosystem versus ecosystem, but it basically relates to the environment around us. And if you look at the planet and if you look at nature, what you will see is that nature is always in one of two phases. It will recognize when it needs to be in growth, but it will also recognize when the ecosystem is in such balance that it's thriving without needing to grow. And it's what's called a log phase. Now, if you think about business and economy and the way we structure our societies, our language is constantly about growth. It's about growth, it's about growth, it's about growth. And if you see economically how we define a good economy and a good society is generally based on GDP. And a lot of new economists are coming into play now that are challenging that. And we're starting to see that, certain societies are picking up different ways of measuring the health of our nation, our society. And New Zealand is one case in point. They actually moved away from GDP as their baseline measure to the 3 Ps of profit, purpose, and people. So there are things that are starting to happen to support this sense of ecosystem approach, which is directly related to the network mind. And the final thing here is focus on power versus force. We don't sadly have the time for me to go into this in a lot of detail today, but if you want to have a look at, literally all you need to do is Google power v force and the work of David Hawkins. And basically what this is saying is ditch influence. Yeah, we do not need to influence to achieve. We do not. What we need to do is we need to be powerful in our presence. And if we are authentic and present in who we are, that is our power. So power is about willpower. Power is about who we are, as opposed to forcing something upon the human system. So the networked mind is always focusing on and favoring authenticity and presence, and not favoring force to make people do things or to get things done. It's easy for me to say that in words, but the reality that we all live in is incredibly complex. But it's something that, of course, you start small and you build out from there. So the network mind, the network mindset, I am hoping that for everybody, there's one tiny thing today that I shared with you that sparked a little bit of a deeper or a broader understanding that you might have had before around this one area of humanizing transformation, this one of the 7 mindsets. And I just want to share with everybody, if you haven't already seen in the chat, Dilyn's kindly shared with us a book that talks about the environmental element, Where Ideas Come From, by Stephen Johnson. Thanks so much for that, Dilyn. That is great. And what I might do is I'll put that into show notes when I send everybody the email and replay later on today. A couple of banana skins to watch out for, as always. First and foremost, blinkers. Yeah, and Leah, I think that's what you were alluding to in the conversation that and the example that you gave earlier on. Be mindful of your own blinkers. Be mindful of when somebody is blinkered around you. And the consciousness is where it all starts. The more conscious you are around that, then that means that you're able to do something about it. And the second thing for me is when we don't go far enough. When you're thinking about your own networked mindset or encouraging it and supporting the development in others, it's keep going to community, to society, to planet, because those elements are really important. So, one of the other banana skins is that we don't necessarily go far enough in our definition of a networked mindset. So everybody, wow, thank you so much. You know, you've stuck around over time again. We've gone 6 minutes over time this morning, but it has been a fantastic session. Again, just a light touch into one of the many areas of the Dilyn Way framework and how we can humanize transformation. But today for me really is special. You know, every single one of us, if we are able to deepen and broaden our own networked mindset, then, you know, I know that what we're doing is we're doing something really cool when it comes to supporting humanizing transformation, shifting those projects and programs into people movements. Thank you so much to everybody for joining today's call and session. I hope that you will join us next week. Tell your friends to come and join us as well, week in, week out. It'll be really great for us to get some new faces into this session every week. And as always, if not today, tomorrow, we will be sending the replay out to you. And again, if you want the slides, just let me know and I'll send the slides. We don't tend to send the slides, only the recordings, but if you want to, just respond to the email and I'm more than gladly send those slides out to you. And any questions that you have, you again respond to that email and we are there. We are open book. We are there for you to help you. So have a great day or evening if you're coming from the Southern Hemisphere, and a great rest of the week. And hopefully I shall see everybody same time, same place next week. Take care and remember your network mindset. I want to see how you go. So thanks everybody. Take care. I'm going to hang around if anybody's got any particular questions to talk to me, but otherwise, thank you everybody, and I'll stop recording. Thanks ever so much.